The fluorescent lights flickered intermittently in Nexus Station's quarantine sector, casting harsh shadows across the pristine, white corridors. Cadet Mara Voss moved silently through the hallway, her enhanced senses on high alert. She could hear the distant hum of the ventilation system, smell the antiseptic that barely masked the underlying scent of biological compounds, and feel the subtle vibrations of the station's core reactor through the soles of her boots. At 22, Mara was the youngest Genesis operative ever assigned to Nexus. The experimental enhancements that had been integrated into her genetic makeup since birth had accelerated her training, placing her in an elite unit despite her junior status. Enhanced olfactory receptors, augmented auditory processing, and accelerated neural pathways made her the perfect hunter. Today, those enhancements would be put to their ultimate test. Cadet Voss, report position. Lieutenant Cole Mars's voice crackled through her earpiece, his usual brusque tone tinged with an edge of concern. Sector 7, Level 3, sir. Mara responded quietly, conscious of every echo in the empty corridor. No visual contact yet, but I'm picking up trace pheromones. It's been here within the last hour. The "it" in question had a designation, XP-7391. But throughout the station, it had earned a more fitting moniker, the Apex Predator. A rogue bioform, the culmination of years of weaponized genetic research, had escaped containment 72 hours earlier, leaving 6 security personnel dead and a trail of destroyed laboratory equipment in its wake. Remember your orders, Voss, Mars continued. Track and contain. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. Director Sinclair wants this asset recovered intact. Mara felt a flicker of disgust at the word asset. She had seen the aftermath of the Predator's escape, the bodies torn apart with surgical precision, the fear frozen on their faces. Whatever had escaped was more than a simple bioweapon. It was intelligent, calculating. Understood, sir. Proceeding with caution. As she continued her slow progression through the corridor, Mara's thoughts drifted to the briefing she'd received before deployment. Director Sinclair had been tight-lipped about the specifics of the Predator's capabilities, emphasizing only the importance of its recovery. But Dr. Elena Reyes, the lead geneticist on the project, had been unable to maintain the same clinical detachment. Mara had noticed the tremor in her hands, the way her eyes darted nervously around the room, and the subtle undertone of guilt in her voice as she outlined the creature's known behaviors. It learns, Dr. Reyes had said quietly, almost to herself, faster than we anticipated. The corridor opened into a larger laboratory space, equipment overturned, and specimen containers shattered across the floor. Mara moved carefully, scanning for movement in the shadows. The pheromone trail was stronger here, mingled with something else, a metallic tang that pricked at her enhanced senses. Blood. Fresh blood. Crouching down, Mara examined a small droplet that glistened under the emergency lighting. Not human. The color was wrong, too dark and viscous. She dipped her fingertip into it, bringing it closer to her nose. The Predator was injured. A subtle shift in air pressure was her only warning. Mara rolled sideways as a mass of rippling muscle and sinew dropped from the ceiling panels above, landing precisely where she had been kneeling. In one fluid motion, she drew her pulse pistol, firing a single shot that grazed the creature's flank before it disappeared behind a toppled centrifuge. For a split second, Mara caught a glimpse of her target. The Apex Predator was a nightmarish fusion of predatory adaptations, the sleek musculature of a jungle cat combined with the armored hide of a reptile. Its eyes, however, were disturbingly human, amber irises with vertical pupils that contracted as they fixed on her. Contact in Sector 7, Mara reported into her comm, keeping her pistol trained on the centrifuge. Subject is wounded but mobile, requesting backup. Static answered her call. The Predator must have damaged the comm relays in this sector. A low growl emanated from behind the equipment, followed by the sound of claws scraping against metal. Mara adjusted her grip on the pistol, heart racing as she tracked the creature's movements by sound. It was circling, looking for an opening. The attack, when it came, was from an unexpected direction. The creature burst through a side door, moving with blinding speed despite its injury. Mara fired twice more, but the predator was too fast, closing the distance between them in milliseconds. She braced for the killing blow, but instead, the creature halted a mere foot away from her. Its massive head lowered, nostrils flaring as it inhaled deeply. Mara realized with a chill that it was smelling her, or more specifically, a small cut on her hand she'd received while scaling a maintenance ladder earlier. The predator's eyes locked with hers, an unsettling intelligence reflected in their amber depths. Then, without warning, it collapsed to the floor, limbs splayed at awkward angles, eyes glazing over. Mara kept her weapon trained on the seemingly lifeless form, her enhanced senses detecting the subtle continuation of its breathing. The creature wasn't dead. It was feigning death, like a possum confronted by a larger predator. But why would the station's most lethal creation resort to such a primitive defense mechanism? Cautiously, she took a step closer, pulse pistol aimed at the creature's head. Protocol dictated that she should immobilize it now, while she had the chance. Yet, something held her back, a nagging intuition that there was more to this encounter than a simple hunt. Her hesitation cost her. In a blur of movement, the predator was gone, disappearing into a ventilation shaft with a speed that belied its size. The metal grate clattered to the floor, the only evidence of its passage. Mara lowered her weapon, confusion mingling with frustration. She had failed her first real test as a Genesis operative. But more troubling was the creature's behavior. It had her at its mercy, but chose to flee instead. It had sniffed her blood, recognized something, and made a decision. The apex predator wasn't just intelligent. It was calculating. And somehow, Mara sensed that their brief encounter had been more of an assessment than an attack. As she reported back to command, Mara couldn't shake the feeling that she had just become part of something much larger than a simple containment operation. The predator had looked into her eyes and seen something that made it pause. What that meant, she couldn't yet fathom, but she was certain of one thing: their next encounter would not be by chance. Lieutenant Mars's face was a mask of skepticism as Mara completed her report. The debriefing room, with its stark lighting and featureless walls, seemed designed to intimidate rather than comfort. "Let me get this straight. Cadet," Mars said, pacing the small space with measured steps. "You had a clear shot at the target, and instead of taking it, you stood there while it pretended to die and then escaped?" Put that way, Mara's actions sounded indefensible. She straightened her spine, meeting her superior's gaze directly. "Sir, the behavior was unexpected. The asset appeared to be exhibiting strategic thinking beyond what we were briefed to expect." "Strategic thinking?" Mars snorted. "It's an animal, Voss. A very dangerous, very expensive animal that Director Sinclair wants back in its cage. With all due respect, sir, what I encountered was more than just an animal." Mara struggled to find the words to describe the intelligence she'd glimpsed in those amber eyes. "It assessed me. It made decisions based on information it gathered. Animals don't play dead to avoid combat with a smaller threat. They do it to avoid predators." Security Chief Rowe, a hulking man with cold eyes, who had been silently observing from the corner, finally spoke. "Are you suggesting that XP-7391 recognized you as a threat it couldn't handle? Because our data indicates it could have torn you apart without breaking a sweat." Mara felt a chill at his clinical assessment. "No, sir. I'm suggesting it chose not to." The room fell silent, the implication of her words hanging heavy in the air. If the predator was capable of choice, of restraint, then it was far more than the bioweapon they had been told to recover. Director Sinclair, who had been reviewing Mara's footage without comment, finally looked up from his tablet. His thin face revealed nothing of his thoughts. "Thank you for your creative interpretation, Cadet Voss. You're dismissed for now. Report to medical for a standard post-exposure check. Then get some rest. We'll resume the hunt at 0600. Mara recognized the dismissal for what it was. They didn't believe her. Or worse, they did. And that information was being compartmentalized. "Yes, sir." She saluted crisply and turned to leave. "And Voss," Sinclair added, his voice stopping her at the door. "Next time, don't hesitate." As the door slid shut behind her, Mara couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing crucial pieces of a larger puzzle. The station command knew more about the Predator than they were sharing, information that might be vital to understanding its behavior. The medical bay was nearly deserted when she arrived. The overnight staff reduced to a single technician who barely looked up from his console as she entered. Mara submitted to the standard battery of tests: blood work, neural scans, exposure analysis, with practiced patients. "All clear, Cadet," the technician said finally, disconnecting the monitoring equipment. "Though your cortisol levels are elevated, try to get some actual sleep, would you?" Mara nodded absently, her mind still replaying the encounter in Sector 7. As she was pulling her uniform jacket back on, the medical bay doors slid open to admit Dr. Elena Reyes. The geneticist looked even more haggard than during the briefing, dark circles under her eyes, suggesting she hadn't slept in days. "Dr. Reyes," Mara acknowledged with a respectful nod. "Cadet Voss." The scientist glanced at the technician. "Would you give us a moment, Parker? I need to review some of the cadet's genetic markers in private." Once the technician had departed, Dr. Reyes's professional demeanor crumbled slightly. She moved closer, speaking in a hushed tone. "I heard about your encounter. You said it sniffed your blood and then disengaged." Mara nodded, surprised by the urgency in the scientist's voice. "Yes. It had the opportunity to attack, but chose not to. Almost like it recognized something." Dr. Reyes's eyes darted nervously to the door before she pulled a small data drive from her lab coat pocket. "It did recognize something," she whispered, pressing the drive into Mara's hand. "These are the complete genetic logs for XP7391, files that were deliberately omitted from your briefing." Mara stared at the tiny device, its weight suddenly seeming much greater. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because you need to understand what you're hunting." Dr. Reyes's voice was strained with suppressed emotion. "And because I can't keep pretending that what we've done here is justified by any conceivable end." Before Mara could ask anything further, the doctor stepped back, her professional mask sliding back into place as the medical bay doors opened again. "Your enhanced healing factor is functioning optimally, Cadet," she said loudly, for the benefit of whoever had entered. "The minor lacerations should be completely healed by morning." With that, she turned and left, leaving Mara with more questions than answers and a data drive burning a hole in her pocket. In the privacy of her quarters, Mara inserted the drive into her personal tablet, encryption protocols automatically engaging to shield her activities from the station's surveillance systems. The files loaded slowly, decades of research unfolding before her eyes. What she read made her blood run cold. The Apex Predator project had begun as an attempt to create the perfect infiltrator, a bioform that could adapt to any environment, overcome any security system, and eliminate targets with precision. But somewhere along the line, the scope had expanded. The scientists, driven by corporate directives and the intoxicating possibilities of their own research, had incorporated increasingly sophisticated neural structures. They hadn't just created a weapon, they had created a sentient being. More disturbing were the logs detailing the source material for the Predator's enhanced cognitive abilities. Genesis operatives, the same program that had produced Mara herself, had provided the baseline, her baseline. According to the logs, the apex predator shared significant genetic markers with Mara Voss. They were, in the most fundamental sense, kin. That explained the creature's reaction to her blood. It had sensed their kinship at a molecular level. Mara's hands trembled as she continued reading. The testing protocols described in clinical detail were nothing short of torture. Pain response evaluations, stress endurance assessments, cognitive resilience under extreme conditions, all conducted on a being that, according to its neural scans, was self-aware enough to understand what was happening to it. The final entry was the most damning. Dr. Reyes had formally protested the continued testing, citing clear evidence of advanced problem-solving, emotional responses, and even rudimentary communication attempts by the subject. Her concerns had been noted and summarily dismissed by Director Sinclair, with a chilling addendum. Emotional projection onto the asset is counterproductive. Reminder that XP-7391 is property, not personnel. The predator hadn't escaped by accident. It had been planning, learning, waiting for the right moment. And now, it was loose in the station, with intelligence and capabilities that the command staff were deliberately concealing from the very operatives tasked with recapturing it. Mara removed the drive and sat in silence, the implications of what she had learned weighing heavily on her. She had been created by the same corporation, modified and enhanced to serve their purposes. How different was she, really, from the creature she had been sent to hunt? One twist of fate, one different decision in a laboratory years ago, and their positions might have been reversed. Sleep eluded her that night, her dreams haunted by amber eyes that reflected her own face back at her. Morning came too quickly. Mara reported to the command center at 0600 precisely, her face betraying none of the turmoil that roiled beneath the surface. Lieutenant Mars was already there, conferring with Security Chief Rowe over a holographic display of the station. Cadet Voss. Mars acknowledged her arrival without looking up. We've recalibrated the biosensors based on your encounter data. The creature appears to be moving between sectors 5 and 9, using the maintenance tunnels to avoid detection. Mara studied the display, noting the pattern of movements. Not random. The predator was systematically working its way toward the central power nexus of the station. Why would it head for the core? She asked. Genuine curiosity momentarily overriding her suspicions. Rowe's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Irrelevant. Your job is to track and contain, not analyze motivation. The sharp response confirmed what Mara already suspected. They knew exactly why the predator was headed for the core, and they didn't want her asking questions. Yes, sir, she replied, properly deferential. What's the deployment plan? Mars gestured to the display. You'll enter through access point Delta 7 and proceed along this maintenance corridor. The rest of the team will form a perimeter to ensure the target can't double back. Once you've confirmed location, hold position and wait for backup. It was a sound tactical plan, except for the part where it placed Mara alone in the most likely path of the predator. Either they still believed her enhanced capabilities made her the best tracker, or they were deliberately placing her in harm's way. Perhaps as bait. Given what she now knew, Mara suspected the latter. Understood, sir. When do we deploy? Immediately, Rowe interjected. Time is a luxury we cannot afford. As Mara checked her equipment, pulse pistol, tactical scanner, comm unit, she felt Dr. Reyes's eyes on her from across the room. The scientist gave her a barely perceptible nod, a silent acknowledgement of their shared secret. Whatever happened in the coming hours, Mara was no longer hunting blindly. She understood what she faced, not just a dangerous predator, but a being fighting for its freedom, perhaps even its life, a being with whom she shared more than she had ever imagined. The question now was, when the moment came, which side would she choose? The maintenance corridor was dimly lit, emergency strips casting just enough light to navigate by. For most personnel, it would have been a challenging environment, But Mara's enhanced vision adjusted quickly, picking out details in the shadows that others would miss. She moved with practiced stealth, each step carefully placed to minimize sound. The tactical scanner in her hand showed only ambient life signs: bacteria, mold spores, the ever-present microbial ecosystem of the station. But Mara wasn't relying on technology for this hunt. She was following her nose. The predator's scent was distinctive, a complex blend of synthetic compounds and organic musk that tickled the specialized receptors in her nasal cavity. It had passed through here recently, leaving an invisible trail that Mara could track as clearly as footprints in mud. "Status report, Voss," Mars's voice crackled in her ear. Proceeding along designated route, she responded quietly. "Detecting recent traces. Subject is definitely using these tunnels." "Copy that. Perimeter teams are in position. Remember, confirmation only. Do not engage." Mara acknowledged the order, but felt a growing certainty that events would not unfold according to the command's carefully constructed plan. The Predator had demonstrated an uncanny awareness of the station's security protocols. It would anticipate the perimeter, the carefully laid trap. The scent trail grew stronger as she approached a junction where the maintenance corridor intersected with a vertical access shaft. Mara paused, inhaling deeply to analyze the pheromone markers. The Predator had lingered here, recently enough that the molecular trail was still potent. But why stop at this unremarkable intersection? Mara examined the area more carefully, noting subtle scratches on the access panel to her right. With cautious movements, she eased the panel open, revealing a small maintenance cubby filled with environmental control equipment. Inside, partially hidden behind a cluster of pipes, was a dead station rat. The creature's neck had been precisely broken, a clean kill. Not the messy feeding she would expect from a predator. More curious still, the rat had been deliberately placed, almost arranged, in a position that drew attention. It was a message or a test. Mara knelt beside the small corpse, her tactical scanner confirming what her eyes already told her. The rat had been dead for less than an hour. The predator had left it for her to find, knowing she would be the one tracking it. "Find anything?" Mars prompted over the comm. Mara hesitated, then made a decision. "Negative. Just following the trail." The lie felt surprisingly easy. Whatever game the predator was playing, it was between the two of them now. She continued deeper into the maintenance network, finding similar tableaus at irregular intervals. A broken maintenance drone positioned with unnatural precision. A severed cable arranged in a pattern too deliberate to be random. Another dead rat placed where only she would notice it. Each time, the scene was accompanied by a subtle alteration in the predator's scent. A pheromone signature that Mara's enhanced olfactory system translated as anticipation, challenge, invitation. It was leading her somewhere. As she descended to a lower level, the ambient temperature rose noticeably. Mara was approaching the outer ring of the power core, the heart of Nexus Station and the source of its artificial gravity, life support, and defensive systems. Steam hissed from overworked cooling pipes, creating a swirling fog that limited visibility. The trail led to a heavy access door marked Core Maintenance, authorized personnel only. It stood partially ajar, the security lock overridden by what appeared to be a precise application of force to exactly the right component. "Command, I'm at the Core Maintenance access," Mara reported, deliberately vague about her exact location within the sprawling network of tunnels. "The subject appears to have breached the security protocols." Static answered her, the thick walls of the core section interfering with her comm signal. She was on her own. Drawing her pulse pistol, Mara pushed the door open wider and stepped into the core maintenance chamber. The space was cavernous, dominated by the massive cylindrical structure of the station's power core. Conduits and cooling pipes radiated outward like the spokes of a wheel, connecting to various substations that controlled specific station functions. The air was thick with ozone and the metallic tang of superheated alloys. Warning lights flashed at several monitoring stations, indicating system stresses that the automated protocols were struggling to manage. And there, crouched atop a cluster of power relays near the main coolant intake, was the apex predator. It made no attempt to hide or flee as Mara entered, its amber eyes tracking her movements with unnerving intelligence. The wound on its flank from her earlier shot had already healed to a faint scar, testament to its enhanced regenerative capabilities. Mara raised her weapon, establishing a clear line of sight. Command: visual confirmation of the subject in core maintenance, awaiting backup. Her words echoed in the vast chamber, met only with the persistent static of a blocked communication channel. The predator tilted its head, a disturbingly human gesture of curiosity. Then, with deliberate slowness, it lowered itself to the ground, limbs folding beneath its body, eyes half closing. It was playing dead again, but this time, there was no mistaking the intentionality behind the action. This was communication. Mara kept her weapon trained on the creature, but made no move to approach. "What are you trying to tell me?" she murmured, not expecting an answer. To her shock, the predator's breathing pattern changed, becoming rhythmic and deliberate. Short burst, long pause, short burst. Again and again, in a pattern that tickled at the edge of Mara's memory. Binary code, the most basic form of machine communication, 1010. The realization hit her like a physical blow. It wasn't just intelligent. It was trying to communicate in a language it thought she would understand. Slowly, keeping her movements deliberate, Mara lowered her weapon. "I don't understand," she said softly. "But I'm listening." The predator's eyes opened fully, fixing her with that unnervingly human gaze. It rose to a sitting position, then extended one clawed limb toward a nearby console. The screen activated at its touch, lines of code scrolling too fast for an ordinary human to follow. But Mara's enhanced neural processing allowed her to capture fragments, security protocols, override commands, reactor specifications. The creature was hacking the station's core systems with an ease that suggested intimate familiarity. "You know the station," Mara said, understanding dawning. "You helped build it." The predator turned back to her, a low rumble emanating from its chest. Not a growl of aggression, but something closer to affirmation. Before Mara could process this new revelation, the heavy thud of boots on metal flooring announced the arrival of station security. The sealed door at the far end of the chamber burst open, and a squad of heavily armed personnel poured in, weapons raised. "Target acquired," Security Chief Rowe's voice boomed through the chamber. "Stand down, Cadet Voss." Mara didn't move, her body positioned between the security team and the predator. In that moment, she made a choice that would irrevocably alter the course of her life. "The subject is non-hostile," she called back, keeping her voice steady. "It's attempting to communicate. There's something happening here that we don't understand." "What we understand," Rowe replied coldly, "is that you've failed to contain a dangerous asset. Step aside, Cadet. That's an order." Mara felt the predator shift behind her, tensing for combat. Without turning, she made a small gesture with her hand. "Stay." Remarkably, the creature seemed to understand, remaining in place though its muscles trembled with restrained energy. "Sir, I respectfully request that we attempt communication before resorting to force. The subject has demonstrated—" "This is your final warning. Voss." Rowe cut her off, signaling his team to advance. "Move, or be treated as compromised." In the split second before chaos erupted, Mara felt a strange calm settle over her. The path before her was suddenly clear, as if illuminated by a light she hadn't known existed until this moment. "I can't do that, sir," she replied, raising her pulse pistol, not at the predator, but at the approaching security team. All hell broke loose. The security team opened fire, pulse rounds streaking through the air toward Mara and the Predator. With inhuman speed, Mara dove for cover behind a coolant tank, returning fire with precision that dropped two security officers before they could adjust their aim. The Predator moved like liquid shadow, leaping to the ceiling and then dropping behind the security team, its claws finding vulnerable points in their armor with surgical precision. It wasn't killing them, Mara realized with surprise. It was disabling, incapacitating with controlled force. Rowe bellowed orders as his team scattered for defensive positions, caught between Mara's covering fire and the Predator's lightning attacks. Warning klaxons began to sound as stray pulse rounds struck sensitive equipment, triggering automated safety protocols. Core integrity compromised, an automated voice announced calmly over the station's PA system. Initiating emergency containment procedures. Massive blast doors began to descend around the perimeter of the chamber, threatening to seal them all inside with the increasingly unstable reactor. "Fall back," Rowe ordered his remaining men. "Secure the outer perimeter and prepare for Protocol Omega." Protocol Omega, the kill switch. Every Genesis operative had one, a genetically keyed failsafe designed to shut down their enhanced systems in case of rebellion or compromise. If Rowe activated it, Mara would be paralyzed, helpless. As the security team retreated through the narrowing gap of the blast door, Mara turned to find the Predator already at her side, its breathing synchronizing with hers in a way that suggested more than coincidence. "We need to get out of here," she said, gesturing to the destabilizing core. "And we need to stop them from activating Protocol Omega." The Predator's amber eyes blinked once in what Mara interpreted as agreement. It turned, loping toward a maintenance hatch that even Mara hadn't noticed, cleverly concealed behind a bank of monitoring equipment. With one powerful swipe of its claws, it tore the hatch open, revealing a narrow service tunnel beyond. Mara hesitated only briefly before following. Whatever the creature was, wherever it was leading her, she had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Her future, if she had one, lay in understanding the truth that the Predator seemed determined to reveal. The service tunnel was claustrophobically narrow, forcing Mara to crouch as she followed the Predator's shadowy form. The sounds of the station's alarm systems were muffled here, replaced by the rhythmic thudding of machinery and the hiss of ventilation. "Where are we going?" Mara whispered, though she wasn't sure the creature could understand her words. To her surprise, the Predator paused, turning its head to look back at her. Its clawed hand reached out, not threatening, but beckoning, before it continued forward with renewed purpose. They emerged into a small control room that Mara didn't recognize from any of the station schematics she had studied. The space was cramped, dominated by a single console covered in a fine layer of dust, a room forgotten or deliberately hidden from the station's official records. The Predator moved to the console, its claws tapping at the controls with unexpected dexterity. The screen flickered to life, displaying what appeared to be security footage, but not from the present. The timestamp indicated a date 3 years earlier. Mara watched in growing horror as the footage revealed a laboratory where a smaller, less developed version of the Predator was subjected to a series of cruel tests. Scientists in Nexus uniforms administered electric shocks, chemical irritants, and surgical procedures without anesthesia, meticulously recording the subject's responses. And supervising it all was Director Sinclair, his thin face impassive as he observed the creature's suffering. "They were torturing you," Mara whispered, a cold rage building within her. "Testing your limits." The Predator growled softly, tapping commands to advance the footage. Now, it showed the same laboratory. But the subject had grown, its form more closely resembling the creature that stood beside her. It was no longer restrained, but confined in a transparent cell, while technicians worked at a nearby genetic sequencer. Dr. Reyes appeared in the frame, arguing heatedly with Sinclair, though the footage carried no audio. The timestamp jumped forward repeatedly, showing similar confrontations over months. The doctor's expression growing increasingly distressed as the predator's training and testing continued. She tried to stop them, Mara realized aloud. That's why she gave me your files. The final sequence showed a younger version of Mara herself, unconscious on an operating table as Dr. Reyes extracted blood and tissue samples. The footage then cut to those same samples being integrated into the predator's ongoing development. The truth hit Mara with stunning clarity. They used me to make you, she breathed. My genetic material, my enhancements. That's why you recognized my blood. We're connected. The predator turned to her, and for the first time, Mara saw beyond the fearsome exterior to the sentient being within. Its eyes held not just intelligence, but emotion, anger, yes, but also determination, a fierce will that mirrored her own. The console suddenly flashed red, an alert scrolling across the screen. Protocol Omega initiated, Genesis asset deactivation in progress. Mara felt it immediately, a creeping numbness beginning in her extremities, her enhanced systems beginning to shut down one by one. Her vision blurred, the specialized receptors in her eyes failing as the kill switch attacked her genetic modifications at their source. No, she gasped, stumbling against the console as her legs threatened to give way. They're shutting me down, the predator growled, a sound of unmistakable anger. It moved swiftly to Mara's side, supporting her weight as she fought against the spreading paralysis. With its free hand, it interacted with the console again, bringing up what appeared to be the station's security protocols. Through increasingly foggy vision, Mara watched as the creature bypassed firewall after firewall with intuitive ease, eventually accessing a secure database labeled Genesis Override Protocols. You can't stop it, Mara managed, her voice slurring as the paralysis reached her facial muscles. The kill switch is genetically keyed. Only Director Sinclair has the abort codes. The predator made a sound that could almost have been interpreted as dismissal. It continued its work at the console, eventually bringing up a genetic sequence that Mara recognized as her own. With precise movements, it began altering specific markers, bypassing rather than deactivating the kill switch protocol. As it worked, Mara felt the paralysis halt its advance, hovering at a threshold that left her weakened but conscious. Whatever the predator was doing, it was buying her time. A sudden crash from the corridor outside indicated that security had tracked them to this hidden room. The predator tensed, abandoning the console to move protectively in front of Mara, its powerful form coiled and ready for combat. The door burst open, revealing not security forces but Dr. Elena Reyes, her lab coat torn and a stolen pulse pistol clutched in her shaking hands. They've initiated full containment, she said, without preamble, her eyes darting between Mara and the predator. They're going to scuttle the station rather than risk either of you escaping. The predator relaxed fractionally at the sight of the doctor, a reaction that confirmed Mara's suspicion that there was history between them beyond what the footage had shown. Protocol Omega, Mara managed to say, fighting against her partially paralyzed vocal cords. Can't move much longer. Dr. Reyes moved quickly to the console, assessing the predator's work with a scientist's practiced eye. He's created a temporary bypass, but it won't hold. We need to remove the genetic inhibitor completely. She looked up at the predator. The equipment is in my lab. The doctor had referred to the predator as he, not it, not asset, not subject. Why are you helping us? Mara asked, as the doctor and the predator worked together to get her to her feet. Dr. Reyes's expression was a complex mixture of guilt and determination. Because I helped create both of you, she said simply. And because what they've done, what I've allowed them to do, is unforgivable. Together, the unlikely trio made their way through the service tunnel, the predator leading and Dr. Reyes supporting Mara's increasingly unresponsive body. The station's alarms continued to wail, now accompanied by automated announcements of critical system failure imminent. All personnel proceed to evacuation points. They're really going to destroy the station? Mara asked, struggling to process the escalation. Nexus was always designed to be disposable, Dr. Reyes replied grimly. The research, the viable specimens, that's what they value. And right now, you two are the only specimens they can't afford to lose. The Predator growled at this, a sound that needed no translation. They emerged from the tunnel, into a deserted corridor, not far from the main laboratories. Dr. Reyes guided them toward her private lab, checking each intersection before proceeding. The evacuation order had cleared most personnel, but security teams would still be searching for them. Almost there, the doctor murmured as they approached a door marked with her name. I can disable the inhibitor, but it will trigger alerts. We'll have minutes at most before security converges on our position. The Predator made a series of clicking sounds that somehow conveyed understanding and agreement. It positioned itself at the door, ready to defend their position while the doctor worked. Once inside the lab, Dr. Reyes helped Mara onto an examination table, quickly attaching monitoring equipment to track her failing systems. The inhibitor is nanoscopic, integrated with your central nervous system, she explained, preparing a syringe filled with silvery fluid. This contains counteragents that will neutralize the kill switch, but the process is unpleasant. Do it, Mara managed through clenched teeth. The paralysis had reached her diaphragm, making each breath a conscious effort. As the doctor injected the counteragent into Mara's neck, the Predator moved to her side, one clawed hand resting lightly on her arm, in what could only be described as a comforting gesture. The pain was immediate and overwhelming, liquid fire coursing through her veins as the counteragent sought out and destroyed the nanoscopic inhibitors throughout her body. Mara arched off the table, a scream trapped in her paralyzed throat. The Predator maintained its contact, a steady presence amid the agony. Its amber eyes never left hers, reflecting a depth of understanding that transcended language. Just as the pain reached a crescendo that threatened to consume her consciousness, it broke like a fever, leaving Mara gasping, but suddenly, gloriously free. The paralysis receded rapidly, sensation flooding back into her limbs with pins and needles intensity. It worked, Dr. Reyes confirmed, studying the readouts. Your enhanced systems are reactivating without the inhibitor constraints. You'll be stronger now, faster. They can't control you anymore. The implications of those words struck Mara like a physical blow. No more inhibitor meant no more constraints on her strength, her speed, her senses. But it also meant no way back. She was now as much a rogue asset as the Predator. Before she could fully process this new reality, the lab door slid open to reveal Lieutenant Mars, his uniform disheveled and a pulse rifle clutched in white-knuckled hands. Dr. Reyes, he acknowledged tightly, his eyes darting between the three occupants of the lab. I've been ordered to inform you that your presence is required at Evacuation Point Alpha. Director Sinclair's orders. The doctor stood her ground. I'm not leaving, Lieutenant. Not until I've finished what needs to be done here. Mars's expression was conflicted, the rigid discipline of a soldier warring with something deeper. Elena, please. The station is going critical. Whatever point you're trying to make. This isn't about making a point, Dr. Reyes interrupted sharply. This is about correcting a fundamental wrong. Look at them, Cole. Really look. What do you see? Assets, weapons, or living beings who have been used and abused for corporate profit? The lieutenant's gaze shifted to Mara, who had risen to stand beside the Predator, their shoulders nearly touching. Whatever he saw in that tableau caused something in his rigid posture to soften slightly. The evacuation order is legitimate, he said finally. But the search parameters for you three have been misfiled. You have about 10 minutes before the system corrects itself. He placed a security access card on the nearest counter. This will get you to the auxiliary shuttle bay. What you do after that is beyond my jurisdiction." With that, he turned and left, deliberately not looking back. "Why would he help us?" Mara asked, testing her returning strength by flexing her hands. "Because beneath the uniform, Cole Mars is still human," Dr. Reyes replied, already gathering equipment and data drives. Something Sinclair and his corporate masters forgot a long time ago. The Predator moved to a computer terminal, interacting with it briefly before a schematic of the station appeared, highlighting a route to the auxiliary shuttle bay. "Can you pilot a shuttle?" Dr. Reyes asked Mara as they prepared to leave. "Basic training only," Mara admitted. "I wasn't scheduled for advanced flight certification until next month." The doctor smiled faintly. "I think your friend can help with that. His neural mapping includes complete knowledge of station operations, including shuttle navigation." Mara looked at the Predator with new understanding. Not just a weapon or a test subject, but a being designed with specific skills and knowledge. A being that had been waiting for the right moment, and perhaps the right ally, to escape. "We need to go," she said, feeling the subtle vibrations through the floor that indicated the station's growing instability. Now, the journey to the auxiliary shuttle bay was a gauntlet of security checkpoints and emergency bulkheads, each overcome through a combination of Mara's enhanced abilities, the Predator's intimate knowledge of the station systems, and Dr. Reyes's access codes. They encountered few personnel. Most had already evacuated or were gathered at the main shuttle bays. As they approached the final corridor, leading to their destination, an explosion rocked the station, sending them staggering against the walls. "Primary coolant system failure," the automated voice announced with inappropriate calm. "Core meltdown imminent. All personnel must evacuate immediately." "They're accelerating the self-destruct," Dr. Reyes said grimly, struggling to regain her balance. "We have minutes, not the hours they announced." The shuttle bay doors loomed ahead, sealed with an emergency lockdown protocol. The doctor swiped Lieutenant Mars's access card, but the panel flashed red, denying entry. "Override failed," she reported, her voice tight with tension. "They must have changed the security parameters." The Predator stepped forward, examining the control panel with focused intensity. After a moment's consideration, it extended a single claw and, with surgical precision, severed specific connections within the panel's circuitry. The doors slid open with a hydraulic hiss. Beyond lay a small bay containing 3 emergency shuttles, sleek and functional craft designed for rapid evacuation. Only one showed active status lights, the others dark and presumably disabled remotely. As they moved toward the functioning shuttle, the station's PA system crackled, and Director Sinclair's voice replaced the automated warnings. "Dr. Reyes," he said, his tone conversational despite the circumstances. "I'm disappointed. You were always the idealist of the team, but I never took you for a traitor." The doctor activated the shuttle's entry ramp, ushering Mara and the Predator aboard before responding. "The only betrayal was against basic human decency. Howard, something you sacrificed at the altar of corporate advancement years ago." "Such melodrama," Sinclair sighed through the comm. "We're advancing the boundaries of human potential. There are always costs in pursuit of greatness." "Tell that to the beings you tortured in the name of progress," Dr. Reyes shot back, following her companions into the shuttle. The interior was utilitarian. A small cockpit with 4 acceleration seats, basic life support, and minimal amenities for short-duration travel. The Predator moved immediately to the pilot station, its claws dancing across the controls with surprising dexterity. "You won't get far." Sinclair's voice followed them, now coming through the shuttle's communication system. "The beacon in that craft will lead our recovery teams straight to you. And even if you somehow disable it, where will you go? 2 genetic aberrations and a disgraced scientist. There's no place in civilized space for what you represent." Mara took the co-pilot seat, strapping in as the Predator initiated the launch sequence. "He's right about the beacon," she murmured. "Standard protocol embeds multiple redundant trackers in all station craft." The Predator made a dismissive sound, pulling up the shuttle system's diagnostic on the main screen. With methodical precision, it began isolating and disabling the tracking systems one by one. Dr. Reyes secured herself in one of the rear seats, her face pale but determined. "We're not without resources," she said in response to Sinclair's taunt. "And you'd be surprised how many in the scientific community quietly oppose what Nexus represents. Your bleeding heart colleagues won't save you when the board dispatches hunter teams," Sinclair replied coldly. "Assets as valuable as XP-7391 and Cadet Voss won't simply be written off. You've stolen corporate property worth billions." Mara felt a surge of anger at being referred to as property. But before she could respond, the Predator finished its work on the tracking systems and engaged the shuttle's engines. The craft hummed to life, lifting slightly on its landing struts. "Howard," Dr. Reyes said, her voice suddenly gentle, almost pitying. "You were a brilliant scientist once. What happened to you?" There was a long pause before Sinclair answered, his controlled facade cracking slightly. "I chose to be on the winning side of evolution. Elena, these creations of ours are the future, not as individuals deserving rights, but as tools to ensure human dominance of the stars." Another pause. "You could still come back, claim coercion. Your expertise is too valuable to lose." The doctor's laugh was tinged with genuine sadness. "Goodbye, Howard. I hope you made it to an evacuation craft." With that, she reached forward and terminated the connection. The shuttle bay doors began to cycle open, revealing the star-studded blackness beyond. Just as the Predator engaged the main thrusters, an explosion rocked the station, more violent than the previous disturbances. Warning lights flashed across the shuttle's console. "Core containment failing," Mara read from the displays. "We need to clear the blast radius." The Predator needed no further prompting. With a surge of power that pressed them all back into their seats, the shuttle shot forward, clearing the bay doors moments before a secondary explosion sent debris hurling into space behind them. Through the viewport, Mara watched as Nexus Station began to break apart, sections of the massive structure tearing away as the core's containment fully failed. The final detonation, when it came, was spectacular and terrible. A blossoming sphere of energy that briefly outshone the distant stars before collapsing in on itself, leaving nothing but scattered debris where the station had been. In the sudden silence that followed, Mara became aware of a soft sound from the rear of the shuttle. Dr. Reyes was weeping, quiet sobs that spoke of relief, grief, and the overwhelming aftermath of long-held tension finally released. The Predator turned from the controls, its mission of immediate escape accomplished, and regarded the doctor with what Mara could only interpret as concern. It moved to her side, crouching beside her seat, one clawed hand hovering uncertainly before gently coming to rest on her shoulder. "I'm sorry," Dr. Reyes said, collecting herself with visible effort. "So many lives. And for what? Weapons development disguised as evolutionary advancement." She looked up at the Predator, reaching out to touch its face with tender familiarity. "I named you, you know. Before they assigned you that horrible designation, I called you Nexus, the connection, the bridge between what we were and what we might become." The Predator, Nexus, made a soft rumbling sound in his chest, leaning slightly into her touch in a gesture that spoke volumes about their shared history. Mara watched this exchange with a complex mixture of emotions. "Where do we go now?" she asked finally, the practical question cutting through the emotional aftermath of their escape. Dr. Reyes straightened, visibly shifting back into problem-solving mode. "I have contacts in the outer colonies, scientists who left the corporate sector for ethical reasons. They can provide temporary sanctuary, while we determine our next steps. And after that, Mara pressed, needing to understand what future might exist for beings like herself and Nexus, neither fully human nor mindless creations. That, the doctor said with the first genuine smile Mara had seen from her, will be for you to decide, both of you, without inhibitors or constraints or corporate directives. For perhaps the first time in your existence, your paths are truly your own. Nexus returned to the pilot's seat, entering coordinates that Mara recognized as a heading toward the outer colonies. As the shuttle's engines hummed with renewed purpose, he turned to meet her gaze. In those amber eyes, so like and unlike her own, Mara saw not just intelligence but possibility, a future unwritten by any hand but their own. She reached out, placing her hand on his arm in a gesture that bridged the gap between their different forms, but shared essence. No words were necessary. The simple contact said everything. Together, they turned their faces toward the stars, leaving behind the wreckage of their creation and the constraints of their design. Whatever they were, whatever they might become, they would discover it together, bound not by laboratory genesis, but by choice, respect, and a shared blood that transcended the boundaries of form. As the shuttle accelerated to interstellar velocities, Dr. Reyes watched her creations, her children, in a very real sense, and felt a weight lift from her soul. She had much to atone for, many wrongs she had allowed through inaction or misplaced scientific curiosity. But in this moment, witnessing the silent understanding between these two remarkable beings, she allowed herself to hope that something good might yet emerge from Nexus Station's dark legacy. The stars streaked into lines of light as the shuttle entered hyperspace, carrying its three fugitives toward an uncertain but self-determined future.